Hey there, Crown Corner fam! It's your host, Crown, back with another round of mind-boggling stories that you just won't believe. Before we dive in, remember these are real stories from real people, and man, do we have some wild ones for you today. From unexpected confrontations to workplace woes, each story is a roller coaster ride. So grab your favorite snack, settle in, and let's get ready to be amazed. You're not gonna want to miss a single moment of this. Alright, let's jump right in. Facts before the story. This was years ago before masks, social distancing, and so on, so I may not remember the details, just the general story. I had a traumatic incident in my youth that I don't care to get into. Needless to say, I have phobias about being touched. My boyfriend once came up behind me to give me a hug and I screamed, dropped to the floor, and started crying. Even now, if we are somewhere watching TV, he asks for permission to just put his arm around me so as to not trigger me. The employees at this store wear either a green or a blue polo, an apron of the opposite color, i.e. if it's green shirt they then have a blue apron, and black pants. I was wearing a bright yellow sundress with daisies all over it, so I was nowhere close to what the employees were wearing. The story: I was at the grocery store picking out some things to make dinner, changing my mind several times and going back to the aisle to put things back if I decided that wasn't what I wanted to make. As I was looking at the pasta aisle and all the choices I had to decide from, I heard an "Excuse me." Figuring I was in the way, I moved my cart aside when a much louder "Excuse me" sounded, followed by an arm reaching out and grabbing my bicep so hard that it took weeks for the bruise to disappear. Upon being grabbed, I screamed and my hand shot out. Not so much a punch, but a slap to this lady's face. I don't know if I was stronger than I thought or she just had poor dental work, but she fell on the ground yelling and began spitting out her teeth. While I stood there breathing heavily, trying to compose myself, an employee ran up and asked if she was okay and did she need any help when she started spinning a tale about how this fellow employee, me, suddenly went psycho and hit her for no reason. He barely got out that she doesn't work here when an elderly man came over and said, "I saw the whole thing." She, pointing at the lady, grabbed her, pointing at me, and she, pointing at me again, merely defended herself. Talking to him later, he said that he recognized my PTSD symptoms and knew that's what had triggered me. Meanwhile, the lady sat on the floor still spitting out her teeth and glaring daggers at the elderly gentleman for speaking out against her. Then when the gentleman said, "Check the cameras," she suddenly bolted up and ran out of there. The employee told me to wait while he went to another aisle and got me a bottle of iced tea and gave it to me to drink while I was trying to calm down. The lady eventually took me to court where my lawyer had me wear the same outfit and had the employee come in wearing his outfit and asked the lady, "What made you think this dress is anything like the employee's uniform?" She had no answer, and her attorney apologized to the court, and after the judge ordered her to pay my attorney fees, it was over. Sorry, I am not the best storyteller and it was a while ago, but thanks for putting up with me and reading my story. I've been lucky with not encountering Karens up until recently. Honestly, I thought the internet over-exaggerated about these crazy entitled people. I came to the sad truth: these people do exist and my faith in humanity dropped just a tad more. And just a little more as I'm typing this, coming to the realization some of these people are raising the next generation. Anyways, I work in the solar industry, mainly residential, as a service technician. Whenever something goes wrong with a solar PV system, I'm the guy they send out to fix it. I've been doing this long enough to have the knowledge and skills to complete an entire installation by myself, with roof pitch and module count within reason, that is. Anyways, I went out with one of the crews for an installation as they were short a few guys, so myself and two of other technicians I work with volunteered to help them out. Seemed like a pretty standard job. 40 plus panels, not a steep roof. Okay, we should be in and out, timing permitting, we're finished and back at the shop by 4 to 5 p.m. So we arrived at the house in what looked to be a pretty rich neighborhood. Homeowner greeted us and even offered to grab us all breakfast. It was a good day so far. So we set up an exclusion zone to prevent anyone from coming too close to the house as equipment, tools, and so on will fall off the roof. I'm on the ground working on building the electrical portion of the system, and I've got my music playing. All is good. I've got myself in a good rhythm. I then noticed the child, who could have been no older than 7, darted past the red tape we had put up and headed toward the ladder to the roof and tried to start playing on it. Like a human being with common sense, I ran over and told the kid he couldn't play on this and that red tape was up so he couldn't get hurt. And now the moment you've been all waiting for. Karen appears. Man, she had it all. The haircut, the sunglasses, and she had the worst spray tan I've personally seen. It's summer, people just go and get some sun. Damn. Don't talk to my son like that. He just wants to play with your tools. Ma'am, I can't allow him to play with our tools. I also can't have him or yourself pass that red tape. We put it up for your safety. Oh, he'll be fine. Just tell your workers to not drop anything on him. Me, who had just lost a couple brain cells from her response, I can tell them to not drop anything all day, but that doesn't exclude the fact accidents happen. And we cannot risk anyone who's a non-worker to be hurt. Now please, leave, because this is an active work site. I can do as I please, and so can my son. We're friends with these people, and they let my son play in their yard. You should take a better direction when talking to potential customers, you know. Ma'am, until I have site plans for an installation on your house, how I speak to you is not a concern I have. If I sound cross, I apologize, but I have now told you twice that I cannot have you pass that red tape. So I am asking once again, please take your son and leave before either of you get hurt. This is an active work site. She grabbed her child's arms and stormed off, while also tearing off a section of the exclusion zone tape and storming over to her house 2 doors down. I stood by our trailer to take a breather and began chain smoking. I try not to get stressed out so much, being my job is already stressful as it is, but I have zero patience for people with no common sense, especially if they are a parent. A little while later, panels are prepped, roof is spaced out. For anyone who knows about solar installations, we use the rackless system instead of actual rails. We're now just finishing off the electrical before placing the panels into position. I am running between the basement and the outside area, and I get back outside, punching in some wires, when I hear one of my guys yelling from the roof. Hey kid, what are you doing? That immediately caught my attention as I thought the little kid had run past the exclusion zone tape once again. But my eyes caught a guy running down the road with a solar panel in tow. He thankfully wasn't very fast without holding the panel. I darted over to this kid with one of our solar panels and attempted to rip it from his hand, while simultaneously trying not to let it hit the ground. I was able to get my hands on it, but this kid actually put up a fight and tossed a solar panel that put me in an awkward position, and he landed a full-on punch to my chest. Not gonna lie, it did knock the wind out of me a little, but I went into full self-defense mode. The kid wanted to take another shot at me since I didn't completely go down. I immediately put him on the ground without throwing any punches. I didn't know how old this kid was and I didn't want to get into trouble for hitting a minor, but I wasn't about to let this kid continue to hit me. I am thankful I have a little background in amateur MMA and a police officer dad, an older brother who've taught me stuff over the years. So I had the kid down on the ground pinned and out comes Karen running. She was screaming like a banshee. The typical I am calling the cops and you just assaulted my son, and I really asked myself if this was happening. I tell her, your son was stealing a solar panel and punched me in the chest. I had to defend myself. I told him to grab the solar panel. My neighbor said I could take one and try it out and see how I like it. At this point, my guys are MIA'd and I tell them to call the cops and keep Karen away from me. As we wait for the cops to show up, this orange-skinned lunatic is ranting about how she's going to sue us all and blah blah blah. Cops arrived about 10 minutes later. I removed myself from the kid and the cops split us all up to take our statements and such. Karen went with her story about how her neighbor said she could borrow a solar panel and try it out. Now, even if he did say that, which he didn't, he can't just let someone take a solar panel because they still belong to the company. Most people who buy solar finance the panels and pay them off over the course of the next couple years. works a lot like financing a car. It gets to the point where the cops ask if I want to press charges for the assault. The guy whose house we were installing had a security camera system and caught the incident all on tape. So I gladly said yes. No idea when the court proceedings are going to be taking place. I honestly just want this over and done with. Edit. Just to clear up some questions in the comments, found out the kid who attacked me was 18, legally an adult, so charges are being filed against him. The homeowner was present during most of the ordeal, and he told us he's never talked to that woman in his life. And I have no idea what Karen's intentions were with the solar panel. If she planned to just slap it on her house, she's as stupid as she's entitled. Hold up, K-Korner crew. If you're loving these crazy stories, make sure to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment below. Your support means the world to us. And hey, it helps more amazing people like you find these wild tales. Quick, easy, and it keeps the good vibes rolling. Thanks a bunch. Now back to the action. This one is a small victory but was super satisfying for me, so I wanted to share. I worked for a large international accounting firm with offices all over the country. Our boss, Karen, was well liked until she became the boss. A smiling assassin type who only cared about her position and looking good in front of the higher-ups. All about the numbers, even if what we had to do to get those numbers didn't make sense. So here's the story. My team, about 12, were primarily based in the London office, but once a week, for my contract and everyone else's, were required to work in a remote office from London. This place was miserable. A building in the middle of nowhere, one tiny corner shop for snacks next to a motorway. The closest place to eat was a 15 minutes drive away. We all hated it. But hey-oh, it was only once a week. Anyway, when our boss got promoted, her sole life mission was to cut costs. Everything from stopping overtime to telling us we had no stationary budget for pins and had to take from other team stores, to allowing one meal on social drinks and making comments at the meal when someone chose theirs to be the more expensive option. Example, are you really choosing that? It's expensive. I'm not sure we are going to have enough budget. This is considering all other teams went for large fancy dinners all the time, unlimited drinks and so on. At one point she decided that the miserable location should be our primary office and she wanted us all to go there 4 days a week instead of one. All but one of our team were living in London. This meant for me a 2.5-hour journey one way instead of 1 hour. After a few months, this really took its toll. The assistant manager, a friend of mine, told me, she said in passing to him that this office was less of a cost on our team budget than the London office. What a shock. I decided to speak to HR and see what my options are. Maybe get an exception. Well, it turns out we had a policy that anything over your normal travel hours to the closest office location to your home could be used as your working hours, aka the extra 1.5 hours each way would be considered working hours. So I could arrive at 10:30 instead of 9 a.m. and leave at 4 instead of 5:30 also. If trains and things were delayed or cancelled, that would be also included in working hours. This happened often as this place was in the middle of nowhere, infrequent trains, so I often arrived at 11:30. I forwarded the emails with HR to her and explained how I would be complying with this policy. She agreed, but tried in a meeting to tell me this was an exception for me, and not to tell anyone else. Well, I told everyone else. We all began complying with the policy. This meant we spent less time in the office and productivity dwindled. She mentioned this a lot in meetings. I would often respectfully point out that it didn't make sense to force us to travel to this office and its effects. I was the main one speaking up about this. At some point, maybe a few months later, she told me I could go to 5 days in the London office, but again, this was a special arrangement for me and that she appreciated me and was making accommodations only for me. She also said that she would tell everyone I had special circumstances that allowed me this arrangement and to keep our conversation confidential. I honestly think she just got fed up with me pointing out how our productivity is lower only because she made us travel there 4 days a week. Of course I complied, but the team noticed I wasn't with them and let's just say it caused a bit of a riot. I didn't say anything, but they figured it out themselves. No special circumstances here. Slowly but surely, one after the other, my colleagues started joining me in London, getting their own special arrangements with her. At some point, the majority were in London. Eventually, it was just her and the only other local colleague at this office while we were in London. We all had a good chuckle about when she would cave, and it took a good few weeks. Then we got the email that our permanent location going forward would be London, 5 days a week, and the one local employee to that terrible office would work from home and come in once a month. It may have happened anyway, but I'd like to think that me speaking to HR and finding that policy at least had a hand in getting us moved back to London. As for Karen, I could go on about so many stories with her, but I did eventually leave, for other reasons directly related to her. Unfortunately, she is still in the same position at that company, and I do however enjoy seeing her checking my LinkedIn profile from time to time, and hopefully noticing that since I left, I have gone from a junior to the same position as her. Many years ago, my wife and I bought an old Ford Telstar for $1,000 as a temporary second car until I got a new job, a work vehicle. We gave it free to her sister, but it stayed registered in my name. The deal was she had to pay for registration and deal with any potential fines. Fast forward a few years and I had separated from the wife. For some time, I was going through a somewhat messy divorce. By coincidence, I was living in the same street as my sister-in-law. I was seeing a lovely girl, and she would stay over at my place occasionally. One day, the new girlfriend and I were in the street walking back from the local shops when the sister-in-law drives over the wrong side of the road, winds down the window, and hurls abuse. Something about the divorce and how I was a jerk. I told her to get lost, at which point she grabbed my arm and pulled me hard against the car. My hand ended up next to the ignition, so I turned it off, yanked the keys and tossed them into the passenger footwell, thinking that would distract her and give the girlfriend and I time to get to my front door. Instead, the sister-in-law jumped out of the car and tried to punch me but missed and thumped my girlfriend in the face. Meanwhile, her car with her 3-year-old daughter inside rolled away and hit another parked car, called the cops, protection, restraining order, and so on. At some point soon after that, I remembered her car was still registered in my name, partially for revenge and partially because I was worried about getting her speeding fines and so on. I filled out the disposal notice stating that the car had been transferred to the sister-in-law. This effectively removed me from the registration. She was angry when she got a notice to register the car. The catch was she hadn't looked after it and it would never pass a safety check. She realized it wasn't worth keeping and, in her own form of revenge, dumped it out the front of my house, full of rubbish, used nappies, half-eaten McDonald's, and more Coke bottles than I could count. She put the keys in my mailbox. More revenge ensued. The dumb woman contravened the court order by coming within a certain distance of my house. The cops must have bored as they knocked on her door and gave her a verbal warning. She couldn't deny the violation as her car was parked right in front of my house. Afterwards, I parked the car on the median strip outside her house so she couldn't use the driveway and tossed the key on her roof. It tracked up some fines and then got towed. And that's a wrap, folks. I'm your host, Crown, and you've been watching Crown Corner. We hope these stories left you as shocked and entertained as they did us. Remember, life's full of surprises, and we're here to share every twist and turn with you. If you've got a story of your own, don't hesitate to share it in the comments. We love hearing from you. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you in the next one. Keep it real, stay awesome, and as always, keep crowning your corner of the world. Peace out.